Today we are going to can up some peaches. And you start, of course, with your fuzzy little peaches. You're going to need about 2 to 3 pounds per quart, and half that for pints, of course. And then prep your canning area. I have my water bath canner. You don't need a pressure canner for this because fruits, the pH of these peaches is below 4.6. Though if you are using white peaches, you might have to add some acid for those. And I'll get into that in the notes with this video. And I've got my water bath canner filled with hot water. And I've got my jars heating in there because you want to handle everything nice and hot. I have my light syrup made up on this side of the stove, and that's got about a little over 5 cups of water and 2 cups of sugar. And sugar helps preserve the color and the texture of your peaches during canning. So you don't have to add sugar, but they'll last better in storage. And again, I'll have more details on that in the info. We have prepped the peaches that we intend to can, and we have these peeled and halved and sitting in lemon water. And I have my lids prepped in warm water, and Dunk is going to be coming to help me in a bit, so I've got those over there for him to grab. I had those on the back of the stove. You never want to boil your lids, but I do find I get a little bit better seal rates if I warm them up. If everything's uniform temperature, then everything heats and cools together, just goes much more smoothly. And then we start filling jars. And I usually do quarts for peaches because that's nice for recipes. I mean, you can make a small peach pie, or you can make peach cobbler by just open up a jar of peaches. And we do have a homemade peach cobbler recipe using our home canned peaches on the website, which is really popular. And then I'm just going to start snagging these peaches, and ideally if you can get them in there, and this is the tricky part, if you use peach halves, you're going to want to guide them in there and see if you can get them round side up, which can be a little tricky. And it's not absolutely essential, but they do tend to stack a little bit better in the jar. Quarters are a little bit easier because you can just kind of shove those in, shake your jar down a little bit, and then they go into place. But halves you got to kind of putz with a little bit. And you want to plan, see, I don't think I can fit another half in there and still stay below my quarter head space, but I'm going to try and find a skinny one here. Yeah, that should fit. We need to remember that we want to have a 1/2 inch head space. I said quarter a minute ago, but it's actually 1/2 inch for peaches. So that's right above this bottom ring here. That's where 1/2 inch head space is. So you want to put your fruit in, fill it with your fruit, and then fill it with your hot syrup. And top that off. And once you got the syrup in, you want to go through and remove bubbles. And you can do that chopsticks, wooden chopstick, or one of these little flat things that help to measure your headspace and help to take out bubbles. But I kind of like my little chopstick because it just slides right down in there, and then I spin it around the outside of the jar, and then get your bubbles out lickety split. And then you shove your peaches back down in there and check your headspace, and that looks good. And then I'm going to wipe off my rim. I got this washcloth a little bit damp. I'm going to wipe off my rim because you don't want your greasy fingerprints or spilled juice or whatever interfering with your seal. And then grab my jar lid. And I've got my lids and rings here in the warm water. I just find it easier to keep everything together. Some folks only put the lid part in there and not the ring. But then I'm fuddling with the ring and trying to reach somewhere else and looking for more pieces, and it's like, nah, I just like it all together. And then you do it finger tight. So it's snug, but you don't want to crank down on that, because during the canning process, the boiling in the canner actually will force that air out of the headspace, and that's part of what preserves your fruit. And so yeah, this one is ready to go in the canner, and then I'm just going to repeat this process and fill up the rest of the jars to the canner. And Dunk's going to jump in and help me. So I'm going to set that aside for a moment while we start filling the rest of the jars. And always be extra careful when you dump off the hot water from your jars, because it is really hot.
And I take care of wiping the rims and putting the lids on, so that way once she gets it filled up, she can move on to fill in the next one, and I get it taken care of for her.
Now see, this one doesn't want to lay nice, so I'm chasing around and go in there. And it's better if you use wood or plastic when you're digging around inside your jars, not metal, so you don't accidentally scratch up inside your jars. As for shelf life on your peaches, generally it's recommended to rotate stock annually. And what you will see in storage is that over time your peaches are going to get softer and the color is going to get darker. They don't go bad unless, you know, the seals, as long as the seal's good, your peaches are good. But they're just not going to be quite as tasty. So the new ball lids are technically rated for only 18 months, which is kind of ridiculous. And given that I found stuff in my grandma's pantry that was 20 years old and lids were still intact, I've actually been using lids from Lehman's or Superb lids, or, oh gosh, where's the other place I've been ordering from, guys? Uline. Uline has nice canning lids too. And Dunk is going to remove bubbles and check on that one. All right, and we're going to keep going and fill up all these jars. All right, just loading these up. That one's too bumpy. I have to retreat.
Retreat!
That one's better. Or maybe this one? There, that's better. Alright, I pulled my canner over here because this is my big burner on my stove, and I'm going to get this last jar in here. With quart jars, I like to lower them in one by one, because if you put them on the rack and then lower them all in at once, you may or may not end up actually having water coming over the top of the pot. Ask me how I know. So if you're lowering them one at a time, you can adjust your water level as needed to make sure that your jars are covered by 1 to 2 inches of water, but the canner is not overflowing. Then I'm going to put the lid on, and I've got this turned up, and we're going to wait until this returns back to a full rolling boil, and that's when you start your timer. For quarts, we're going to process 25 minutes. For pints, it's 20. So, and then once we've got that processing time done, we just turn the heat off, let them rest for a few minutes to reduce siphoning, and that's that water bubbling out because they're still boiling inside the jars. And then we're going to move them over to a towel I have set on the side and to cool off completely. And there we go. Alright, our canner's done. It's cooled down a bit. It's no longer bubbling vigorously. And I'm moving the last of the finished jars out of the canner. And now remember, you always want to be careful because these are still hot, 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 hot. And when you're pulling jars out of the canner, Don't ever tip them like that. That seal is still not set yet. You can lose liquid out of the top, and that can interfere with them sealing. And then they should be popping as they rest here and cool down. And that lid will suck on down. And then you test the seal, make sure it doesn't spring back when you push it on the top. And you let these cool completely. I generally let them sit overnight. And then remove the rings, wipe off any drips, date, label, and store them in a cool, dark location. And again, for best quality, generally within that first year to 18 months. But as long as the seal is still good, your fruit is fine. And the fruit is going to float within the jars. That is absolutely normal because buoyancy is a thing. And if the fruit pops up above the water or the liquid, whatever you've got in there, that's fine. It is going to likely discolor over time if it's sticking up out of the water, but just that part that's above the water, still perfectly safe to eat. When you're canning with peach halves, you're going to need more liquid. If you're using peach quarters, you'll be able to fit more fruit in each jar, so you need less liquid. And with the peach halves, it's going to be closer to 2 pounds per quart. With peach quarters, it's going to be closer to 3. So that's about it. There's going to be a Q&A section in the related article. And yeah, happy canning. Thanks for watching.